morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks on Wednesday, the 18th day of September, year of our Lord 2019. And welcome to the John Moore Show. We've had some technical issues this morning. I believe you already heard the Pledge of Allegiance because we were playing an archive there the first 15 minutes or so. And we'll go straight to the prepper tip of the day. This is a time of year when garden seeds for fruits and vegetables go on sale nationwide, and you can get incredible bargains. I know I bought dozens and dozens of seed packets from Walgreens for 10 cents on the dollar. This is the time to stock up on garden seeds. Keep them in a cool, dry, dark place where they're not exposed to humidity, not exposed to extreme heat, and they will last for years. You'll lose some germination as the years pass by, but you keep them in a good storage situation. They will be good for many years in the future. Professor McCanny is not available today, so we'll have open lines this first hour. Hour two, we'll have my friend Jeff Nyquist with us. I'll talk a little bit about field gear. This would be equipment you use when you're out in the bush. You could be camping. You could be walking patrol. You could be in a bug-out situation, getting to your safe haven from wherever you might happen to be. Field gear. I really like field gear that can be used for more than one purpose. I'm going to start out with one of my favorite pieces of equipment. I've made sure I've got one for every member of my team. It's a U.S. Army issue 5-quart collapsible canteen. 5-quart collapsible canteen. So obviously it can be used as a canteen, use number one. It makes a great pillow, use number two. And if you need to cross a stream, you can pour out the water, blow it up with air, and use it as a flotation device to help you get across that stream. There's 3 uses for one piece of equipment. Now, I don't have them listed on my Amazon products. I was just looking at Amazon. There's some listed there for $40 a piece, shipping included. On eBay, they're running about $20 or so, between $18 and $20 shipping included. For new ones, you really, if you can avoid it, don't buy a used canteen. You really don't know where that canteen's been. But get a new one. By all means, get a new one if you can. So that's just one piece of equipment that was very useful. On my A-team, when I was active on an A-team, I was the intelligence NCO on an A-team in U.S. Army Special Forces 12th Group. I was told when I was accepted, and I went through an interview process with the members of the of both teams, 2 teams in St. Louis, and I was passed the interview process, and I was told that everybody on the team had to buy out of their own pocket a machete to take with them into the field. I already had machetes, so it wasn't an issue, but I went ahead and bought a Collins machete with a 24-inch blade, and I fabricated a custom leather sheath for it. The machete fits real nice with the Alice backpack in between the frame and the pack itself, so it's in a out-of-the-way place where nothing's there anyway. Handy to grab when you need it. Now, here's the thing about a machete. You can clean your fingernails with the tip of a machete. Of course you can. But you can't cut down a tree with a fingernail file. My machete is and those are 2 extremes, of course. Machete is very useful around any situation where you're out in the bush. When I was doing operations out in the field, I always had my machete with me. It can be used to obviously cut down limbs and small trees. It can be used to, when you're climbing up a hill, use it as to help steady yourself when you're walking up a steep hill, just like a walking stick. Not the best. You could certainly damage the tip a little bit by hitting a rock the wrong way, but that's easily remedied by grinding the tip back sharp again. Of course, it can be used as a defensive weapon. If you find yourself without a firearm, The machete can be used as a defensive weapon. Handy around a campsite for dozens of different purposes and different uses. So I'm a big fan of machetes. I like the Collins machete with the, I believe it's 24-inch blade, maybe 22-inch. I don't have that in front of me. But you get, with that longer blade, you get more leverage and can cut down bigger trees with less effort. So that's another great piece of equipment. People will look at through various catalogs and publications, and they'll decide that something is a great piece of equipment and buy it and put it away without having used it first. That may be a massive mistake, and I'll give you one great example that I found out the hard way. When I was in college, a couple of my buddies, also Vietnam vets, they sponsored a survival weekend, and we everybody who signed up, all the college students who signed up, we spent 3 days out in the bush, two overnight sleeps, and I decided to rough it, and instead of taking a sleeping bag, I took a Mylar blanket, also called a space blanket, thinking this will be great. It's lightweight, doesn't take up much space, it'll keep me warm. Well, here's what I found out. First of all, the human body gives off a pint or more, maybe close to a quart, somewhere between a pint and a quart of water vapor at night while you're sleeping. Now, typically, most of us sleep with cotton sheets, sometimes silk or some other fabric that the water vapor can just penetrate right through as if it wasn't even there. But that doesn't happen with a Mylar blanket, the space blanket. And what happens is that moisture from your body condenses on the inside of the space blanket and gets you soaking wet. How about that? Here's a break. Call number is 800-313-9443.
Public Broadcasting Network depends on listener support of our advertisers and of our sponsors. We'd like to especially thank all of you who have taken advantage of our fundraiser with Front Sight Bonus. Those who are now Front Sight members, please train as soon as possible for your sake and for that of our nation. And please consider sharing your training and what you've learned when you arrive home. Republic Broadcasting Network has to stop promoting this fundraiser on air and on the website in just a few days. Dr. Ignatius Piazza, president of Front Sight, made a gracious exception to his no media rule for us at Republic Broadcasting Network. Thank you, Dr. Piazza. And once you've been to Front Sight, feel free to call your favorite host and share your experience on the air. We can continue this fundraiser without media help, but it'll be totally up to the listeners to spread the information. Please call Dan Sutterfield in Missouri at 573-465-2356, 573-465-2356. That's 573-465-2356.
As a listener of RBN, you're surely concerned about being informed and being ready for whatever may come. Please consider the following questionnaire as a soul-jarring wake-up call. If you answer no to more than 2 of these following questions, you probably aren't going to make it through any major disruption in our country. The questions were compiled by people that have been there. Are you really ready? Do you own your own firearm for the primary defense and protection of you and your loved ones? Have you ever been professionally trained to stand against life-threatening behavior? Have you ever practiced enough to fire 500 rounds during a 2 to 4 day time frame, day and night? Can you load, unload, fire, and clear a jam in total darkness? Have all the adults in your household been professionally trained? Are you, life and death, comfortable with your abilities with pistol, revolver, shotgun, and rifle? Are you aware that everything that you do to prepare for an emergency is a waste of time, money, and energy? If you haven't honed your abilities to their highest level to protect and keep what you have, do you have the repair parts that will most likely be needed for each of your firearm, and do you have the ability to install those parts? Could you completely clean every firearm you own? Are you aware that your body won't go where your mind hasn't been? In other words, without proper training, followed by regular practice, you probably will not win a gunfight. Well, how did you measure up? Take the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to start correcting your deficiencies by receiving your Commander Lifetime Membership with Front Sight Firearms Training Facility. A one-time donation to RBN for $500 will give you a Commander Lifetime Membership at Front Sight as a tremendously huge thank you bonus. See details on RBN's webpage to make it happen. The clock is ticking. You had better be ready before it happens.
All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on, it is Wednesday, the 18th day of September. We're going on a cruise. You could make it a romantic cruise if you choose. St. Valentine's Day will be right in the middle of the cruise. It can be a fun cruise. It will be a fun cruise. Great food. This is a luxury resort on the water. 20 restaurants on the ship there that we're leaving on, Harmony of the Seas. Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. They have the best reputation, by the way. We're leaving Port Canaveral on the Saturday, the 9th day of February, returning a week later on the 16th. It will be fun. Leon Green will be with us. We're hoping, really hoping that Sam Andrews and his wife can be with us. We'll find out later. Get the details at my website at thelibertyman.com. If you don't have internet access, you want a nice full-color brochure mailed to you, give Betsy Murphy, our cruise director, a call. Betsy's telephone number is 636-530-9502. I say again, 636-530-9502. We've got a caller on hold here. We got Jerry in Missouri. Good morning, Jerry.
Oh, good morning. You were talking about pocket watches some time ago.
Yes.
And I purchased a pocket watch for about $35. I noticed they run between $35 and $100 at antique malls. This one I got for $35. It didn't work totally right, but it was a quality pocket watch. I took it down to a watch repair person at a jewelry shop, and for $15 they corrected the problem and gave it back to me, and it's worked well ever since. You might be able to find a wristwatch there too at various antique malls. Some of them are quality, and a person died, and they're of high quality, but they're not new.
Jerry?
Yeah.
Did we lose Jerry? Yeah, they're not what,
No.
Jerry?
Pardon?
You were cut off there. You said they're not what, the antique watches?
Yeah, antique watches at antique malls and other places. I bought one for $35, and basically it cost me another $15 to get it up in shape at a watch repair person, and it's worked fine ever since.
Well, that's great. That's good news. And these are wind-up. They're not self-winding. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're wind-up watches, and there's also wrist watches that are wind-up watches at antique places, if you're into those. And a lot of them are just perfectly good. It's just somebody died, and they no longer are using them.
Right. Well, the ones I like are the ones that self-wind, so you don't need to be concerned about winding it up every day. But either way, you need a mechanical watch, don't you, Jerry?
Yeah, you sure do. So anyway, that's a possibility that maybe people have not thought about.
It is. Thank you for the call, sir. We appreciate it.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you. The call number is 800-313-9443. Field gear that's useful for more than one purpose. Next would be ponchos, U.S. military issue ponchos. There's other militaries, of course. I like ours. If you find good quality ones from another Army, by all means, if you like it, go ahead and use it. The U.S. Army issue, woodland pattern, at least in my area, is a great camouflage. I go into the field carrying two of them. You can use it as a poncho, obviously, to protect you from rain. You can use it as a shelter with one on the ground and one overhead, tied to trees or sticks or trucks or whatever you can find to tie them to make yourself a little hooch, as we might say, to protect you from rain and snow and sunshine. We used them to make litters to carry a soldier who was injured, with a couple of small diameter trees, or even just carrying it the four corners. The four men carrying the wounded soldier on the four corners without the sticks. It could be used as a litter. So there's multiple uses for the Army issue poncho. Plus, they also make a poncho liner, which is a light nylon insulated blanket kind of thing. It's also in camouflage, woodland pattern. I like the woodland pattern, obviously. That you can turn the combination of the poncho with that liner into a lightweight sleeping bag. Now, it's not going to keep you warm when it gets down below freezing. Even in the 40s, it's probably not going to be all that warm, but it'll keep you alive. It is warm enough to do that. Now, there are places, I think U.S. Cavalry sells upgrades. I haven't looked for a while, but they do sell upgrades to these poncho liners and the ponchos both to have a higher quality use, better use out of these ponchos with the addition of various accessories to make them longer. The standard issue poncho is really not long enough to cover up your rucksack when you're carrying it. You'll end up with wet legs from about mid-thigh down on the backside with a standard issue poncho, because they simply aren't long enough to drape down and cover up that backpack, that rucksack, and keep you dry when you're moving through the bush in the rain or snow, either one. Here's a bottom of the hour break. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We have a special promotion going on at Republic Broadcasting. This is a fundraiser for Republic Broadcasting involving the energy cleaner. Mail me a postcard. My address is at my website at thelibertyman.com. We pick a postcard every other Thursday. When your postcard is drawn out, you get to buy an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285, $70 discount. $200 goes to Republic Broadcasting. You also get a 10% discount on my mattress pads. So get those postcards in, put your name, your telephone number, your email address on there, and when your postcard is drawn, you get to get an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285. Mattress pads, 10% off. Help us out at Republic Broadcasting and help yourself to get an energy cleaner at a deep discount. It's a win-win situation for everybody. We hope you can get these postcards in soon. Thank you very much. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 18th of September. Got a note from a caller that the U.S. Cavalry is no longer in business. They recommend galls. Galls is great for police, firemen, and paramedics. They don't really have the kind of tactical stuff that we're talking about here, but they do have the professional grade equipment for firemen, paramedics, and police officers, of course. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. There's a lot there. You could spend a lot of time at my website. You really could. Things that we'll find educational and so forth, informative. As of Monday, we now have a turnkey hobby farm for sale. This is a neighbor of mine. He and his wife want to live closer to their adult children, a couple hundred miles away. So they've put their hobby farm on the market. This is a set up, ready to go, functioning hobby farm in my zip code. The only one in my zip code for sale, by the way. And you need to check that out. You really do. If you want to be my neighbor and have a hobby farm, it might be just a ticket for you. Very reasonably priced, too, by the way. Also, my website, of course, you'll find energy clinics for sale. Part of what we're talking about is having the health and the energy to do what needs to be done. You want to make America great? I do. You want to help me make America great? I hope you do. You need an energy cleaner. If you're not getting a great night's sleep, if you're waking up with pain issues, arthritis pain, and so forth, those are reasons you need an energy cleaner. I got caught up in all my shipments yesterday. I got one more going out today. I shipped these things. The UPS driver delivered 26 mattress pads Monday. And I said to him, I see this guy, 2 or 3 times a week. I said, I ship these things all over the planet. They help a lot of people. Energy cleaner and a mattress pad is a great combination to help you achieve your goal of being healthy with less pain and more energy. $285 shipping included to American zip codes. I do take MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, of course. PayPal is the most secure way to make any payment online. Details at my website under products at thelibertyman.com. I also have a toll-free online 24 hours a day, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. We're talking about field gear, what works, what doesn't work, what you want to have, what you need, what you don't want. The call number is 800-313-9443. Talk about boots a little bit. I'm a big fan of all leather boots, except for jungle boots. I like the jungle boots. We weren't in Vietnam very long before the Army figured out that all leather boots didn't last in the jungle for more than about 90 days or so, and that was kind of pushing it. The jungle boot is a combination of leather and canvas and nylon with a heavy rubber sole. Very durable, very comfortable in my opinion. But I like all leather boots. The highest quality boot that I'm aware of for field use, quite frankly, is Danner, D-A-N-N-E-R. That's Delta, Alpha, November, Echo, Romeo, Danner. They make both insulated and uninsulated versions of their boots. I got a pair of their Fort Lewis boots, insulated. I first put these on. My feet said, thank you, thank you. They got a factory insole, a removable insole that's very comfortable. I use it, and I also segue between that and the custom insoles that I get from a custom insole maker. But there's some things you can save money on, like Jerry was talking about, finding a good quality pocket watch at a flea market or a pawn shop or someplace. Some things you can't. And when it comes to boots, don't try to go on the cheap. You will regret it. I guarantee it. You get a pair of boots from Walmart, you will regret it if you have to use them. If they sit in a closet, it's not a big deal, is it? But seriously, you need good quality foot gear. It is not optional. And I really like Danner. There's other brands out there. Red Wing makes a good quality work boot. Good quality work boots will serve the purpose. Typically, they don't come in black. I like black. A good earth tone, dark brown would be fine. Then, of course, come socks. Many of my listeners, at this point, is probably several hundred, have paid heed, and they went ahead and they did something they thought was strange, that I thought was strange initially. They bought merino wool socks to wear in the summertime. It may sound well, there's no maybe about it. It sounds counterintuitive. Why would I wear wool socks in the summertime? Well, until you've done it, you don't know, do you? For decades, up until I found out about merino wool socks, I always wore cotton socks in the summertime, and all summer long, my feet were wet and cold and clammy, and probably yours are too, wet and cold and clammy all summer long because you wear cotton socks. Those cotton socks get moist. It just takes maybe an hour or two, and they stay moist and cold and clammy all day long. Merino wool is a very special wool. The fibers are longer than other wools, which means for almost everybody, almost all the time, they don't scratch, they don't itch. So that's your heads up. I've got good quality merino wool socks from Sportsman's Guide. It's very entry level in terms of price, and I've been cycling them through and using them now for probably 10 years or more. They just last and last and last. I've got good quality merino wool socks off Amazon from various manufacturers, or REI. My wife used to like to buy her merino wool socks at REI. She had small feet and it was difficult to find socks that fit her properly, but they had them there at REI, good quality merino wool socks. You can also get merino wool in underwear, long underwear for your tops and bottoms. Same principle applies. Now, what you don't want is cotton long underwear. You really don't. It'll get wet and you'll get cold. End of story. Within the Special Forces community and men and women who spend a lot of time outdoors, cotton is called, quote unquote, cotton is called the fabric of death for a very good reason. Once it gets wet, it stays wet, and whatever insulation value it had is gone. So some of these modern fabrics for insulated underwear are excellent also. I haven't tried them out myself, but I know they're getting good reviews for their ability to take the moisture away from your skin and keep you warm. So you need to check out both merino wool, long underwear, as well as the modern high-tech fabrics. Your outer garments, about the worst thing you can wear in the bush is blue jeans. Cotton denim is not very good for use in the field. It rips easily. There's no insulation value. Doesn't stretch. It's simply not very good at all for rough field use. Cargo pants are great. I see more people wearing cargo pants as a fashion statement than anything else. They typically have ripstop stitching, which means every 10 stitches there's a heavier stitch to help stop a small tear from getting bigger. They have multiple pockets, cargo pockets, and multiple pockets to keep various items in, and they work. Now, something I need to warn people not to get for long-time field use is Gore-Tex. Yes, Gore-Tex is wonderful. Yes, Gore-Tex performs just as advertised. It lets the moisture from your body escape, the water vapor from your body escape, doesn't let the rain in. It's a wonderful, marvelous fabric. There's a however coming. Now here's the however. To repair Gore-Tex requires specialized tools, specialized fabric, specialized knowledge to be able to repair Gore-Tex properly so that it continues to work and perform as advertised. If you go ahead and buy the specialized tools, specialized supplies, and get the knowledge to repair Gore-Tex, jackets, vests, trousers, hats, whatever it might be, then by all means get the Gore-Tex. If you can find it in earth tone colors, good luck on that. You might. Black is not very good, by the way. Black is not a natural color in the bush, in the field. Black stands out tremendously. You want earth tones, the browns and greens, earth tones is what you want. Maybe a little black here and there to break up the pattern, but not much. So I'm not a big fan of Gore-Tex for that reason. And at some point in the future, I may go ahead and decide to do that. Looks like we got a caller on hold. Let's see. No, yeah, we do have a caller on hold. Jerry in Texas. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, John. I'm glad you brought up the subject of merino socks. I've been kind of doing some search for them and what have you, and I was amazed at the ones that what's out there. My question is, they have most of them are for cold weather. They don't have them for warm weather. I finally found some that was in the
go ahead and wear them anyway. Just wear them anyway. That's what I do.
Well,
yeah.
See,
my feet are... Well, go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a problem with my feet getting cold. They sweat. If I wear too thick a sock, it seems like they don't. My feet doesn't breathe like they should. I've tried. I haven't tried merino socks. I've tried other socks, wool socks, mohair socks, cotton socks. You name it, I've tried it. And so a thick sock doesn't work real well for me.
Well, let's analyze this a little bit. First of all, I mentioned Sportsman's Guide. They sell, at least I hope they still do, an entry level as far as price merino wool sock, which is I would regard as a medium weight. It's heavier than a dress sock and not as thick and heavy as some socks could be. And I've got some socks that are slightly heavier. They're not Arctic grade, but they're heavier than those. And I just wear them in the summertime. And most people, it's normal for a person's foot to sweat. My feet sweat, your feet sweat. If you're wearing really thick socks, and your foot gear may not be large enough to accommodate the really thick socks, which will cut off the blood circulation, and that's not a good thing. So you might want to try the socks offered by Sportsman's Guide, the merino wool socks that they offer for sale. They're good quality. They last, seems like forever. I don't know. But wear them in the summertime anyway. That's what I've been doing, and I've had great success.
Well, the socks I got, again, they were just regular American, I guess, Gremlay wool, and I couldn't wear them. They were too hot for me. And, I mean, my feet, I'm not trying to get graphic with anybody on the radio, but they look like I'd put them in hot water and scald them.
Right.
And,
well,
I wear
the really
boots.
heavy socks. The really heavy socks will have too much insulation there, and you'll end up with hot feet. The merino socks I wear when it's 100 degrees. My feet stay comfortable in terms of temperature, and feeling dry also. So maybe the socks were just too heavy there, Jerry. And of course you need merino wool.
I can't wear a lace-up. I cannot wear lace-up boots. I have to wear full-on boots. I wear the leather Red Wing boot. Seems to be the only thing that'll hold up to me. But again, if I wear lace-ups, my feet will not dry out. I'll clear a room real quick when I pull my shoes off.
Okay.
I'm different. Not bragging or anything. It's just fact.
It's just the way it is. Yeah.
But I was curious about that. I found something on eBay that was supposed to be a light summer merino wool sock that's in a gray. And I was just curious if that's what you got.
Well, like I say, I started out with the socks from Sportsman's Guide, and I've bought other socks since then, and I use both.
Okay.
So, like I say, there's a dress weight, which would be good for dress shoes, and then there's a slightly heavier for use for work with boots, and then the really heavy socks that you wear for when it's really cold and dealing with Arctic type conditions.
That's the ones I was coming across initially was the extreme cold weather sock, and I knew they wouldn't work.
It's too much sock. You need to step down a level from that.
Yeah. If it gets down in the mid-20s here for 2 or 3 days in a row in the wintertime, we've got a blue northern, But
right.
Okay, I just I want to pick your brain on that and get your input. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome, Jerry. You're welcome.
Enjoy your show.
Next caller is Ty in Texas. Good morning, Ty. You on the air, Ty? Ty, you're on the air. Go ahead, sir.
All right, sounds like you got me now. Good morning, John. I wanted to just help out a little bit on your suggestion. I started wearing wool socks, I don't know, it's been a couple of years now. Jerry, if you have access to Amazon and the rest of the listeners and you want to get this, go to Amazon, type in hiker, like you're a hiker going in the mountains, GX, Golf X-ray, hiker, GX, and that should pull up a merino wool sock that's a synthetic blend. I'm here in Texas, and the only way I survive the heat down here is to be outside and do anything is synthetic underwear, a synthetic headband to keep the sweat out of my eyes, and I wear these wool socks, and I don't have any problems. And as far as the kind of physiology that I have, my air conditioner turns on immediately. I sweat like you wouldn't believe, but I don't have any problems with these socks at all. So they're kind of that medium weight. And I think it's important to note that they're not 100% merino wool. So don't
Rarely,
be surprised.
most of them are blend these days. That's true.
There you go. Exactly. All right, John. Thanks for the call,
Okay.
sir.
Thanks for the call, Ty. We appreciate it. Call number is 800-313-9443. A break coming up here in less than 2 minutes. These suggestions are simple, they're inexpensive, and these are the kind of things that make a massive difference in being comfortable out in the bush and being miserable out in the bush. Any fool can go out in the bush and be miserable. That doesn't take any thought or planning at all, does it? However, with proper planning, a little bit of thought, getting the proper equipment, you can be quite comfortable out in the bush. Here's our break. We'll be right back.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 18th of September. I was on an Arctic training operation with Special Forces, and I thought I was well prepared for it. I've never done any Arctic training before. Daytime highs were in the low to mid-teens. Overnight lows were around 10 below zero. So our first night, we did a bivouac. I had everything set up to where I felt I would be comfortable as could be. And so I go to sleep, and I wake up, and I went to put my boots on. And my boots, my leather boots, of course, were wet from snow and so forth, and they were kind of folded over when I went to sleep. And when I woke up, of course, they were still folded over and frozen in place. I'm a pretty strong guy, and I could not get these boots on. We got permission to build a small fire to make some coffee and get our boots warmed up, because all the other guys had the same issue. So what I found out was you bring with you a waterproof bag, and you put those nasty wet boots inside the sleeping bag with you, inside the waterproof bag. Otherwise, you get all that grime and mud and whatever inside the sleeping bag, which is not good. But the waterproof bag will protect the sleeping bag from getting all that dirt inside the sleeping bag, and the boots will remain warm and pliable, so you can put them on the next morning and not have to deal with what I had to deal with. It's little things like that you have to really be out in the bush to learn these things. Experience can be a tough teacher, and experience is probably the best teacher. So that was a good wake-up call there, to have that waterproof bag. The Army issues waterproof bags, by the way. They're typically meant for laundry, for guys to put their dirty socks and T-shirts and uniforms in to take them to the laundromat. Olive drab waterproof bags. It doesn't take up much space. They don't weigh a whole lot, but for that kind of conditions, you really need a waterproof bag to put those boots inside the sleeping bag with you. Typically, I don't carry a sleeping bag with me unless it's going to be below freezing. But at some point, you really need the sleeping bag. And, of course, these modern foam pads are just marvelous in terms of insulating you from the ground. If you sleep directly on the ground or just a poncho on the ground, that cold earth will just suck the warmth out of your body. It will, and you will be absolutely miserable in the morning. These roll-up foam pads are marvelous in terms of comfort and protecting you from the cold, damp earth sucking the warmth out of your body. So I always bring my foam pad with me on these kind of operations where I'll be sleeping overnight, even in rather moderate temperatures, where it's in the 50s and 60s. The earth will do the same thing. Your body temperature is 98.6, and the 60-degree dirt will suck the warmth right out of your body. So it doesn't need to be sub-zero in order for that to be the case. In practice. Finding this stuff and buying it and having it in your inventory is great, and of course I encourage you to do that. But you need to get out and use it. Top of the hour break. We'll be back with Jeff Nyquist. Stay tuned. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Jerry Moore here, our second hour on Wednesday, the 18th day of September. Prepper tip of the day. This is the time of year. It only happens once a year, pretty much nationwide, when stores selling garden seeds for fruits and vegetables put those garden seeds on sale. You may most likely find deep discounts, possibly 10 cents on the dollar. You need to check that out. Stock up on heritage, non-GMO garden seeds and put them in a cool, dry place, and they'll be there when you need them. We're patiently in agreement with my friend Jeff Nyquist. Jeff is a gentleman who began a quest more than 20 years ago to understand, comprehend, eventually become quite knowledgeable, having written books and interviewed Soviet defectors on the topic of the international communist conspiracy. That's what we'll be talking about this hour. And, of course, we'll take your questions, calls, and comments at 800-313-9443. His website's jrnyquist.com. There's a link on my website at my links page. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning.
We talk frequently about the idiocy of the Democratic Party continuing to become more out of control. It seems to be no end to the bizarre, freakish statements that these men and women will make, is there?
No, but it's a bizarre, freakish point of view that they've adopted. So they have to continually make such statements to perpetuate the point of view.
I look at it as a form of psychosis myself, and am true believers in communism. I think there's many people involved in the communist paradigm that know it's stupid and idiotic, but they do it because they think they can advance themselves socially and economically. But people who really believe that silliness are suffering some kind of psychosis. What do you think?
Yeah, it's related to a personality disorder, but it's also, communism is a very complicated subject because it's a deception, but it's a philosophy. But it's a deception. But then it's a religion, and it's a deception. But then it's politics. But then it's a deception.
It is. It's all those things. Now, when I was involved in the anti-war movement back in the 70s and late 60s, I met quite a few men and women who were self-professed communists. And I got to know them, and I determined that many, I would say the majority, came from upper middle-class backgrounds, private high schools, Ivy League colleges or close to it, upper middle class where they had house servants and vacation in foreign countries, probably had 2 or more homes, and they hated themselves. They hated the wealth that they came from. They hated their family's position in society, and this was their payback to get some personal satisfaction going against their status in society, the family that raised them, and their elevated position in our society, to destroy everything that got them to where they were. Have you made some similar observations?
Yeah, the self-hatred, I've seen that. There's I'll relate a story. When I was in graduate school, there was a bunch of us. We had just finished teaching a class that had hundreds of students, and it was Introduction to Political Analysis. And it was rather difficult class in terms of the number of people we had in each section. Each of us had 100 students.
Right.
And of course, there was midterms, finals, lots of assignments. And we went out for pizza and beer afterwards. And then they took the party to one of the older graduate students' homes. And they were all Marxists, these other graduate students. So I was listening to them, and then began a period of confession about how they saw the world. And this one Marxist Colombian, he was a young Colombian graduate student from Columbia, he used to say, "I hate Americans." And then he suddenly tells this strange story that he was walking in Laguna Beach on a beautiful moonlit evening on the boardwalk, and it was like, what a beautiful moment. And the sun was, the moon was perfect, the night was perfect, the air, the breeze was perfect. And then he thought about all of the starving people in the world and all of the suffering in the world and how black and horrible it was. And then his next thought was, in 100 years, nobody will remember me. And the world went black to him. And I thought to myself, this puzzled me. It's taken me years to understand. And the others all related to this. And then related sad stories about their childhood or their youth, which really weren't that sad. I mean, they weren't tragic. But it was, to put it short, they were wounded by their own unimportance in the world. The tragedy was that they were not considered great or significant or, somehow their importance was not as great as they wanted it to be. And this was what I realized. They had some kind of ambition to be something other than what they were. Thus the self-hatred, the self-loathing. Why aren't I Superman? Why aren't I the God of the universe? Why am I this paltry thing, this human being walking down? See, it wasn't about all the suffering people in the world. It was the fact that he couldn't be Superman. He couldn't rescue everybody. He wasn't the great hero of the universe.
That brings to mind, you've recalled something I haven't thought about for a while. The campaign manager for a congressional candidate that I knew back in, this would have been 1972. At the time, he would have been, I guess, in his early to mid 30s. And he said, I can almost give a verbatim quote. He said, at some point in your life, you figure out that you will never be president of the United States. And he was saying that in such a manner that it made it clear that his heartfelt disappointment that that he would never have that opportunity to be president of the United States. And he ended up getting elected to state office himself, I think a state rep or state senator, and raised children who were red diaper babies himself. His children became Marxists. But that self-loathing and self-hate and hatred for where you came from, hatred for your family's financial wherewithal, hatred for the wonderful education you had at private schools, it makes no sense, does it?
No, not really, except that, when we talk about narcissism, which is, it smacks of the grandiosity of narcissism. Narcissists and psychopaths both have grandiosity, which means they always must associate themselves with something grand or great, And it wounds them to think of themselves as insignificant. And that is astonishing because, of course, our life is significant for its own reasons for ourselves as the people living our lives. And the idea that we have to do something grandiose, like be president, to make our life meaningful, is a very strange kind of need for somebody to have. And yet they do feel that need.
They do. They do. And this is what we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, is the leadership of groups like the Democrats and the socialists, the Antifa people, obviously communists. The leadership of those kinds of groups are filled with people who meet that description, aren't they?
Yeah, and there is matching it a kind of imposter phenomenon in that they believe they're entitled. There's a sense of self-entitlement. And they also believe that that they've despaired of knowledge of really doing any honest work because they believe it's all for naught. The only thing that really matters is that their greatness be recognized in some way, that their life have grandiosity. And so being a communist, being part of this global movement to save mankind, or however they conceive it, is like the pill that makes them feel better, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense to them, and that's an accurate observation there, Jeff. What happens to these people when they know their goal of taking over our country at the ballot box is doomed to failure? They probably are recognizing that right now, aren't they?
Well, they feel depressed.
So
it's a
they feel depressed.
Profound depression.
Profound depression. The question is, of course, what percentage of these people would be led to commit acts of violence because they know that their goal of a socialist nirvana here in the United States by taking over the ballot box is not going to happen? Or are they going to resort to violence? That's the real question.
Yeah, I mean, there's something inherently unstable in their characters. And violence, that's an interesting question. You know, a psychopath can turn violent and be very cold and violent. Narcissists can be cowardly. So it's, I don't know. They certainly can be part of it, whipping up the violence of other people, of much simpler people, or of doing violence in a way that doesn't put themselves at risk. I never heard once that Karl Marx put himself at serious risk, or Lenin put himself at serious risk. Yeah, I know Stalin was a different kind of character, so I wouldn't say the same thing about Stalin. But yeah, it's psychopaths though don't feel danger like other people. Narcissists do feel it, but they have an attenuated sense of danger. So, yeah, violence is always a possibility. And doing things that are self-destructive, we return to self-destructive impulse that you mentioned before. It is.
Well, we've already seen examples. Antifa is probably one of them, and Black Lives Matter, of course, is in there. But Antifa is probably the most prominent group prone to violence right now, where if men and women get together to do something patriotic, a patriotic display of their support for our country, the Antifa people show up to commit violence and attempt to stop it or disrupt it. That's already going on, isn't it?
Oh yeah. That's look. They have so threatened the Rose Parade in Portland, Oregon, for example. They had to cancel it a couple of years back because Antifa said that Republicans were marching in the parade and they would physically attack them if they marched.
Well, that's caving in to the bad guys, and it sets a
Yeah.
bad precedence to cave in to that kind of threat. Once they've had that kind of success, they will continue to achieve similar successes in other venues, won't they?
Oh yeah, because now they've realized the power and the grandiosity. They're able to affect other people's lives in a very profound way. And there's in the criminal mind, like in the communist, there is a self-validation, a self-affirmation that happens when they do these kind of things. And this is partly why they keep doing them.
Right. Well, they get satisfaction from doing these things, and they congratulate each other within the confines of their little Antifa group. It's a very upstanding and elevated status that they get for participating in this kind of event. Don't they get that?
Yeah, of course. It's the grandiosity. They're part of something really important and world-changing, and they're going to bring about the destruction of the system, and there's going to be a new system. So they're going to give birth to something that's going to become a new form of civilization. These are extremely grandiose things. The sort of mankind hasn't even entered onto its proper history yet until they do their thing. So it's the psychology and the kind of things they tell themselves, and it is like a religion, because the spiritual hole that's inside these people is so huge, because they don't see themselves as ordinary or normal people, and they don't really value ordinariness or normalness. They want to be special. They need to be special. And that was the thing that at first baffled me, was why he thought it mattered that no one would remember him in 100 years. Who cares?
Right.
If
you want to have a legacy, if you want to have a legacy, become an artist and do beautiful works of art, or a musician and write beautiful music, or a sculptor and make beautiful works of art as a sculptor. If you want to be remembered and have a legacy, other than grandchildren who might remember you a century in the future, but that's the way it's done by normal people most of the time, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be it. Is do something that has lasting value in terms of beauty, but they're not drawn to beauty. There's something ugly about the things they're drawn to, Well,
that brings up something we haven't discussed for quite a while, and that's the infiltration of the schools that teach the art teachers. Were taken over by the communists decades ago, and to create globs of paint that pass for art instead of beautiful works of art that we've always had for centuries. That's by design, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. To destroy human values seems to be part of what they do. Like the destruction of economics, communism is a form of nihilism, because it denies the spirit. It denies what is spiritual. It offers a political salvation, which is the negation. They call it the negation of the negation. That's Marx's term for it.
Right.
And the thing is that it's nihilism. It's not the creation of anything positive.
Right. Well,
and so
that's
decades, the impulse. Yeah.
Yeah. In the Soviet Union, all those decades, they had this mythical, perfect communist man who would put the interest of the state ahead of the man's personal selfish interest for himself and his family. That's a fantasy. That goes against the most basic part of human nature, is to put yourself and your family's needs, your wife and children's needs first. And that proved to be an absolute dismal failure, didn't it, sir?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. the communist system is itself a failure. It's merely the destruction of civilization, of everything that's been built up, the destruction of the economy, the destruction of the morale of the society, the destruction of individual lives. Yeah.
It's all those things. It's all those things. And, of course, at the top, it's a monopoly where a few hundred families, for example, own and control the wealth of the country behind the scenes. What appears to be state-owned wealth is actually owned and controlled by a few wealthy individual families, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, they monopolize the positions. They control it. They derive the wealth from it. And they keep everyone else down.
And it was well known during the during the years of the Cold War that in Moscow there was a store that wealthy Russians could go shopping at that had all the latest and greatest items from the West, but average Russians were prohibited from even walking in the door, weren't they?
Yeah, these stores are limited to party members, the ruling party. So it's all about, the gang that's in power, the gang that controls everything. That's basically what it's about. And they're gangsters.
And during that period of time, I would read about Russian immigrants coming to this country, and the first time they walk into an American supermarket, they're just overwhelmed. It's sensory overload to see the hundreds and hundreds of choices that there are in a modern American supermarket that they did not know even existed. It was just, they found it sensory overload, didn't they?
Oh yeah. No, the wealth that the United States produces is not something that their society can produce, and so people come from there to here, and they've heard the lies about capitalism. They're told that we're all living in poverty over here and just a few rich people. The 1% are the only people that have anything. They come over here and they find out that ordinary people have homes and cars and other physical possessions, and there's good food to eat at the stores, which there are not. Even in Russia today, I'm told by Russians, it's really bad over there. And they will break down and cry and realize they've been lied to their whole life, that this exists, that this is possible, that this could be possible for their country, but yet it's something
So I got a question for you. In light of what you're saying, and I know what you're saying is true and accurate. In light of what you're saying, how do they keep these Russian Spetsnaz in line? When the Russian Spetsnaz get assigned here, working undercover and whatever the cover may be, and they see the wealth of America, that their assignment, of course, is to destroy this country. I know the training that Spetsnaz goes through is brutal, where men routinely die in training. In America, when a man dies in training, there's a congressional investigation. But in Spetsnaz training, it's expected for men to die in training, and there's no investigation by a comparable outfit in Russia. So it must be the training is so hard and so brutal that they manage to keep these guys in line, and despite them learning that everything they've been told about this country is absolutely false and untrue, they still maintain them in these undercover positions, laying in wait to destroy this country when they get the signal, don't they?
Yeah, they teach them contempt for their enemy, and they teach them basically one of the tenets of Marxism that is very useful to them is that the bourgeois are contemptible, that the middle class, the people who live a comfortable middle class life, are contemptible because they're weak. And of course, this is easy to put over on soldiers because soldiers are stoical. The soldiers do not seek comfort. They seek challenge, and they seek hardship. So they see the people that have wealth and have things as being weak, and they're a target for their proud, ability to overcome. So that's the way they keep soldiers. It's not so difficult.
Well, that's insightful. It's very insightful, Jeff, because that answers some of my personal questions about how they managed to do this, which is it's very unique how they accomplish it, and obviously they do. We've talked previously about the Russian spetsnaz being in this country at I've been told more than 3,000 locations. Keeping in mind there's more than just over 3,000 counties in this United States of America. So they're here. They're living what appears to be normal American lives, doing whatever jobs they've been assigned to hold out to the public as being normal, while at the same time they're trained and equipped and supplied to commence the Red Dawn invasion when the signal begins. And we're still looking at a 13-month time frame here. I've talked to some people recently. Given the enormity of how big this operation is, I don't believe they can speed it up. There's just too many moving, complex pieces to move up the timeline as much as I think they would like to. I don't believe they're going to do it before 13 months. What do you think, sir?
Well, you remember that the Russians are not going to go by themselves without the Chinese, and the Chinese are not going to go without the Russians. And
plus all the countries south of our border. All the countries south of our border have a piece of the pie, and the gangs, MS-13 gangs, and so forth. Yeah. So it'll be a multifaceted invasion. It won't be just Russia. You're right. It won't be just China. Yeah. It'll be all of South America and the gangs.
My understanding is that Russia and China are the primary movers, and that they meet. They're somewhere in their border areas. I don't know if it's Mongolia or where. There are secret meeting areas, perhaps even underground, where the leaders, representatives from Russia and China, are continually there negotiating and planning and working out the details of what they intend to do. And the lesser countries, the satellites and the terrorist organizations receive orders or parts of the plan that they're to carry out. But it's worked out mainly between the Russians and Chinese, who finance and control the various elements, the mafias, the triads, the spies overseas, the Spetsnaz, the GRU, the MSS, SVR elements that go to it. The politicians they own here and in Western Europe, the countries, the smaller countries they control. So I think that it has so many moving pieces, as you say, that it has to be like a symphony orchestra. There has to be a conductor. And, of course, they use the metaphor for it is the overture. This is what they call the preparatory period for World War III. And this has been a very long overture because the overture began with 9/11.
Right.
And now with the attack on the two Saudi oil facilities, the attack on the Saudi oil facilities is really important because it's an escalation of the situation. To, if you have if these kind of attacks continue, you literally have to destroy the military capability of Iran.
Hold that thought. We'll get back to this discussion after the break. Call number is 800-313-9443.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We have a special promotion going on at Republic Broadcasting. This is a fundraiser for Republic Broadcasting involving the energy cleaner. Mail me a postcard. My address is at my website at thelibertyman.com. We pick a postcard every other Thursday. When your postcard is drawn out, you get to buy an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285, $70 discount. $200 goes to Republic Broadcasting. You also get a 10% discount on my mattress pads. So get those postcards in, put your name, your telephone number, your email address on there, and when your postcard is drawn, you get to get an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285. Mattress pads, 10% off. Help us out at Republic Broadcasting and help yourself to get an energy cleaner at a deep discount. It's a win-win situation for everybody. We hope you can get these postcards in soon. Thank you very much. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Tuesday the 17th. Okay, I'm sorry for that. We are back. This is J.R. Moore. It is Wednesday, the 18th of September. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. We got some technical issues we've been dealing with here, and hopefully everything gets squared away. There's lots there. Things that will inform you, educate you, entertain you, possibly make you angry. We have, concerning Jeff Nyquist, we have 2 radio shows archived there. And you scroll down the right side where it says Red Dawn in bright red letters, learn the true nature of a Russian invasion. We've got first interview with Jeff Nyquist on May 22nd, and then the following day, May 23rd, interview with Command Sergeant Major Dan Page. I was telling a friend of mine I served with in Special Forces the other day about these interviews, and I said, you really need to listen to these, and you really need to listen to them also. If you have issues with pain, arthritis pain, joint pain, back pain, you need an energy cleaner. Do you sleep as well as a small child every night like I do? Probably not. I use my energy cleaner every night. I sleep as good as a small child every night. You can also. When you sleep is when you heal. $285 shipping included, American zip codes. The mattress pads that go with it, they vary in price. We got twin size, full, queen, king, California king, the handy travel size. Everything's right there. We can read up on it, read the wonderful testimonials from people we know, like Steve Whitman. Go ahead and place your order using PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. You can call my toll-free order line 24 hours a day to place your order as well. 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Visiting with Jeff Nyquist, his website is jrnyquist.com. He has books for sale on Amazon that you can buy. I encourage you to get and read his books. His website is jrnyquist.com. There's a link to my website at thelibertyman.com. Let's continue, Jeff.
Yes, about the attack in Saudi Arabia against the oil facilities, we're hearing this theory that the Iranians, who are said to be behind it, are doing it because they're being embargoed and it's hurting their economy, and that supposedly they've done this to try to say, well, now you got to let up on us or we won't let up on you. Now, this would be the first time in history that a country that was basically being squeezed economically would actually commit a kind of terrorist act to try to get the other side to undo the blockade.
Saudi Arabia is not the one doing the blockade, are they? I don't believe.
Well, no, they're not, but it's indirectly right. The problem is that doing this is not going to get them to lay off on Iran. It's just not, it doesn't make sense. So I don't think the Iranians are ultimately the ones calling the shots. I think it's the Russians. I think the Russians have, the Iranians are the clients of the Russians and Chinese.
Well,
and I think it has a different meaning.
Okay, before we get to our next caller, describe for our listeners, please, the relationship, military, political, economic relationship between Iran and Russia, if you would, please.
The leaders of Iran were trained in Russia. The Ayatollah Khamenei went to Moscow State University. He's believed by some people in U.S. intelligence to be a Russian agent. So are the leading clerics running the regime. They're Russian trained. The engineers that are attempting to build their nuclear weapons are Russian trained. They get their weapons from Russia. I mean, Iran is a Russian cat's paw, basically.
A client state, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, our next caller is Kenny in Louisiana. Good morning, Kenny.
Good morning. How you fellers?
Yeah.
Hey, y'all talked or hit a couple subjects that just really hit home on me today. I know a psychopath / narcissist, and I I had to do some studying on that and learn a little bit because I had no clue what that was. And, I know your guest is a whole lot more knowledgeable than I am, but I learned that there was two kinds. A lot of doctors and lawyers and highly successful business people are psychopaths, but they took it in a good way. And there's the evil psychopaths that have become killers and such as that have took it in a bad way. And when you all talked about the art, I just say Google art by psychopaths and look at that. That is some evil stuff. These people are sick. And I want to go to one more subject. I don't want to tie up your conversation. But near you all, or near you, over there by Lebanon and Camdenton and Montreal, I had a small 7-acre off-site place for several years. And I had a Russian lady that lived in a little camper down there back behind me on another 7 acres. And she kept talking about the war that was coming. And back then, and we're talking almost 10 years ago now, I didn't understand what she was talking about, but she kept saying, whenever we'd visit with her, and we didn't visit very much because she wasn't a very sociable person, and her husband would come and visit like every 2 or 3 months. I mean, she just lived back there by herself. And me and another neighbor, we actually Googled a little bit about her to learn, and come to find out she was a lawyer from, I don't remember exactly where, but she was a lawyer, but she was living back there in the woods and just off-grid, she had electricity, but she was just back in nowhere. And just wanted to throw that out there, that what you're talking about, they are here. She's there. And she's over there by Montreal, Missouri, and that area, and Camden and Lebanon, and the psychopaths and stuff. And I just wanted to throw that in there. You're hitting a lot of bases with me this morning.
Well, before you get away, Kenny, did she give any details on the war to come, with the nature of it, when it would happen, anything at all?
No, she just like it was like in the future, but she was ready. And it's an odd thing, and like me and the neighbor guy, he just come down for the weekends and had a little place out there. He lived up in St. Louis, and he was more up on stuff than I was, and he actually went home and Googled about her, and he was telling me she's a lawyer, and she actually had a website and stuff, but she never hardly left the place. She was, she might go to town once a month to get groceries, and the rest of the time she raised her goats and stuff. She had a small child with her.
Right.
Yeah.
And her husband would come and spend a weekend about every 2 or 3 months.
Yes, and he was a fine dressed person. It wasn't like they were bums living in the woods. They weren't.
Right.
She got one of them little camper, I call it a small home type thing. You see, trailer house type thing, but it's $30,000 thing. She moved out there.
Right.
They had money.
Right. Interesting. Well, there's people like that all over the country, Kenny, and we do appreciate the heads up, and we do thank you for your call, sir.
You're welcome. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Well, it's not that I need verification or confirmation, but it's always gratifying to get it, isn't it, Jeff?
Yeah, that's pretty clear, isn't it? That's an interesting story. There's a lot of these Russians, they know that war is coming, and they're not too big on making a secret out of it. Of course, the Russian media has been saying this now since 2014, that war is coming. So that's 5 years they've been telling the Russian people. And of course, this is one thing we missed here in the West. Russian military doctrine, if you read the Soviet military strategy, edited by Marshal Sokolovsky, it says in there that you must orient the people to the enemy before you begin a war. And so they have been orienting the Russian people with their media. So they've been talking about nuclear war and destroying America and how America wants to destroy Russia. This has become a common theme on Russian television. And it's even caused some Russians that I know to despair of the situation. because they think, oh my gosh, this is worse than anything we heard during the Cold War. This is outrageous. They're getting ready for war. I mean, they can see it in just by watching the media.
Well, this is your heads up, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Jeff Nyquist and myself here on Wednesday, the 18th day of September, telling you what's going on the other side of the planet with Russian media, Russian government, Russian nationals in this country who are pretty blatantly and openly talking about war being inevitable, as if it's a given. This Russian woman living in the woods out there in Missouri, blatantly talking about war as just the way it's going to be. Right, Jeff?
Yeah, that's the way they talk. There was also a friend of mine who is a businessman in South America. He he befriended a Russian woman there that was living down there alone, and her father had been a Russian diplomat who had been working with the Chinese in some secret facility in the Far East, and he basically took her to South America and said, you must never go to the United States. They're going to destroy the United States. You can't go there. And he said, I'm going to try to, stop what they're doing, but I'm probably not going to make it. So if you don't hear from me again, don't go back to Russia and don't go to the United States. And that guy died. He was assassinated in France.
Well, he was a man who had ethics and morals and wanted to do the right thing for the right reasons, and he paid the ultimate price for that, obviously. And I hope his daughter pays heed and will keep herself and whatever, if she has children, safe. I've also thought myself about whether I should try to evacuate my own family out of this country, and quite frankly, Jeff, it is something that I have considered seriously. I don't want to quickly go through another war myself. I'll do it if I need to, but I don't want to expose my daughter and grandchildren to that. That's anything I can do to save my children and grandchildren, I will do that.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. The thing about it is, this is what I always tell people. When during World War II, Hitler basically declared war on the Western Allies and eventually invaded the Soviet Union, but he always claimed that his real enemy was the Jews, that it was Jewish Bolshevism and Jewish capitalism that he was fighting. And so he started rounding up the Jews, of course, in Europe, and we know the rest of the story. And what's interesting is, if you read Hannah Arendt's book, Eichmann in Jerusalem, she goes into what happened to the Jews in the different countries of Europe. And it wasn't just, there was no safe place. He demanded, Hitler demanded from various countries to give up their Jews. And of course, some countries gave up their Jews, others tried to hide them. But I believe the same thing will be with Americans. If you're overseas, you better hope and pray that government isn't frightened into giving you up.
Right.
Because they will give you up to captivity or death. And that's why it's not. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. That's sage advice, and a lot of thought has to go into becoming an immigrant to any country. For the time being, I'm staying put and making plans to get my family down here where I can help protect them. If they're 2,000 miles away, I can't do very much, obviously. I just shipped my oldest grandson, 22 years old, a Garmin GPS and a hardbound spiral road atlas, so he and his buddy can find their way down here if they need to, between the two. I'm looking also at staging fuel and food and water at different locations along the way with very close friends and relatives to have way stations for my grandson and my family to make their way down here if and when this whole thing begins. There's things I'd rather be spending my time and resources on than preparing for World War III, but I find I have no choice, Jeff.
No, you don't. When you know it's coming, you don't have any choice. And of course, the way we live the way we live today, the whole thing about electricity and water and how you're going to get your water and how you're going to get your food. All of these things are very difficult.
Right,
when you have conditions of war, you don't know exactly what is going to be available or how anything is going to be able to be done. And of course, our lives depend on those things.
Right. Well, the lack of potable water will kill more people than bullets. That's my knowledge. That's my base of knowledge. Various books and novels and documentaries and apocalyptic films, they all focus on the spectacular of what happens in civil disorder with bullets and other things. But it's routine things, lack of sanitation, lack of potable water, improper diet leading to malnourishment, which reduces your immune system. Those are the things that kill the masses, aren't they?
Yes. It is. When you have a society where we're so protected and insulated by our technology, if that technology should be gone, if the electrical grid should collapse, how are you going to get your water out of the ground?
I know that there's been many stories written about inner city youth being taken on a trip to the countryside, and they stop the bus next to a field full of cattle, and they tell the boys and the girls from the inner city, that's where your McDonald's hamburgers come from, looking at the field full of beef cattle. And the youngsters from the inner city are incredulous. They have no idea that the beef in their McDonald's hamburger comes from animals, comes from cows. That's how disconnected they are. It's a complete disconnect with reality, isn't it?
Yeah, we live in an advanced state of society, but it's very fragile. And that's the thing that people don't quite understand, is that all this technology, with all this technology comes a kind of vulnerability.
Right.
Because we've become dependent on it, and it can be knocked out.
Right. Well, I'll give you a good example. To knock out all the lights in New York City in 1870, you would have to go to each home and take their candles and oil lamps. To knock out all electricity in New York City today, in 2019, it can be done from Moscow with computer hackers. So, we've become quite vulnerable with lots of things concentrated in very small areas, choke points, so to speak, electricity, natural gas, petroleum products, and so forth, that our enemies know this. What I've said frequently is 12 men with common hardware store items can bring down any major city overnight, taking out the power grid, the fresh water, the natural gas, the telecommunications, with simple hand tools from any hardware store anywhere in the country. You don't need weapons. You don't need explosives. All you need are common hardware store items to bring down any major city overnight. No, correct, Jeff?
Well, just think, they took down the Twin Towers and set the Pentagon on fire with box cutters and airplane tickets. If you think about it.
Of course, there's more to it than that, and there were explosive charges in those buildings. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come down from airplanes hitting them. But the initiator to the public is aware of course, is box cutters and airplane tickets. So people need to be aware of this and make preparations accordingly, don't they, sir?
Yes, they do. Absolutely.
Typically at your website, the articles you write really don't get into preparations that much, if at all. You leave that up to other people, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I used to have a page, and it's probably still accessible on the old website. I've heard people mention that it's still up, about all the books about preparing. And there's a lot of books. I mean, you could go to Amazon. There's books on surviving nuclear war that go into great detail on various survival methods. And, of course, knowing how to survive a biological attack, people don't often know. I believe that a biological attack is going to be one of the primary forms of attack used. And, of course, the number one thing you can do to protect you from a biological attack is to go inside your house, close all the doors and windows.
Right, exactly. That's if you know it's coming, which is not going to be an advance warning. The first notice you get may be your neighbor falling over dead.
Yeah, I think, it depends on the sequence of events and the type of biological weapon used. What's interesting is the most effective biological weapons are not contagious, but you catch them because they seed cold air masses with the biological agent. So that's the most likely form of transmission, and so therefore it's outdoor air that is the danger with the biological weapon. So if you have a good air filter in your home, you can reduce the risk of staying indoors.
Well, the holy grail of Russian biochemical warfare for decades has been a communicable form of anthrax, which the book Biohazard talks about that and documents. And when Ken Alibek left the Soviet Union and escaped, they had not yet achieved that goal, but that's been more than 20 years ago. So if they've achieved the goal of a communicable form of anthrax, it's really off to the races, isn't it?
Yeah, well, of course, the anthrax is not a contagious illness, but it's the most virulent bacterium that there is. And if it's even contact with the skin can cause your skin to become infected. And if it's in the air and you can breathe it, we breathe, 4 gallons of air a minute, the average person. And all you have to do, they make the particles, half a micron in diameter, and you inhale it, and it reaches the bed of the lung, and then you're going to get a super pneumonia. It's going to kill you within 3 or 4 days.
That's right.
Basically.
That's right. Unless you get really heavy doses of drugs immediately, you're going to be dead.
Yeah. Actually, it's the immune reaction that kills you. That's what I've been told, and of course, even if you're pumped full of antibiotics, you've got a single-digit %, I forget what it is, chance of surviving. It's pretty low.
It is. Unless the antibiotics take place within hours of exposure, you're pretty much toast no matter what they do. So, people need to be aware of this. They need to start their preparations now if they haven't already, and do what they can, right?
Yeah, they should do what they can and become as informed as they can. And to know, to recognize who the enemy is. I mean, the biggest problem we have is orientation. People don't know who the enemy is. They think that the enemy is all kinds of people that it's not. And it is these powerful nations. It is the communists domestically here. The enemy, foreign and domestic. Who's the domestic enemy? The people that are working with our foreign enemy. That's the communists. It's not Donald Trump, by the way. It's the people accusing him, which is really confusing. But this is what they do.
It is. Well, it's Hillary Clinton and Pelosi and the Democratic National Committee. And it's those characters who are cooperating with our enemies, either with full knowledge or just without their knowledge or cooperating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they seem to be on the same page with everything. And you see these corrupt links between certain politicians and businessmen and China, Chinese businessmen, Russia. You've got these stories. Biden, for example, the guy that's running in the Democratic Party, he's got these connections through his family to China. And of course, Biden was a guy who was initially promoted in his career by Al Gore Sr., who was basically promoted by Armand Hammer, who was a Soviet agent.
Right.
So you see these connections, and you go, who is he really? Who is really behind this guy? And this is we've never sorted out.
I've seen photographs of Al Gore Jr., former vice president, on the knee of Armand Hammer, and what looked like a posed photograph. Armand Hammer was the only man on the planet back in the 60s and 70s who could land his private plane at Moscow airport. He was the only person, to my knowledge, from the West. Anyway.
And Edward J. Epstein published the Hammer file some years back, and it was the file basically showing that Hammer was a long-time agent of the Soviet Union going back to the 1920s. So Armand Hammer wasn't just a businessman. He was the Russian Secret Service, the Special Services businessman, and he made it a very importantly, he made himself into somebody that presidents had to pay attention to.
Right.
And
he was
used his influence. Yeah.
I would characterize him as similar to George Soros. What do you think?
That's a good comparison, because George Soros is almost certainly of that same kind. I mean, you can't take seriously the claims that George Soros is just simply a liberal businessman, and that he's the enemy of Putin. I think that's all a show. That's for show. I don't think he's Putin's enemy. I think he's working in coordination with Putin, and that the other is just cover to give him credibility. But he's the fact that his fund came out of the Netherlands Antilles, which is ground zero for laundering the Colombian communist cocaine money, is very intriguing to me. You know, it's like, why the Netherlands Antilles, and where does that money really come from?
Right.
That he's funding all these leftist organizations. Yeah.
Right. Well, Jeff, we are out of time, sir. I want to thank you for being with us. Have you back next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Okay. That's it for the day. Get your medical supplies, your energy, cleaning, your essential oils now while you can. Your firearms ammunition. Ever hear from John. Please do a fun, safe, productive day. God bless America.